The final presidential debate is over, and thanks to a new muted mic policy and an admitted change in strategy from President Trump, Americans were treated to moments of substance and real policy discussion at long last.
You keep talking about all these things you're going to do and you're going to do this, but you were there just a short time ago and you guys did nothing.
We did.
You know, Joe, I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job.
You know who I am. You know who he is. You know his character. You know my character. You know our reputations for honor and telling the truth. Character of the country is on the ballot. Our character is on the ballot. Look at us closely.
All right, let's talk about how it went. We have CNN political commentator Angela Rye. She's the former executive director of the Congressional Black Caucus and CEO of Impact Strategies. And Sarah Isgur is with us. She's our CNN political analyst, and she's also a staff writer for The Dispatch. Okay, so I wonder what you guys think. Sarah, you say that this race isn't actually about issues. It's about the candidates themselves. Do you see President Trump's apparent discipline that we saw last night, which stood in stark contrast to the first debate, really helping him over the next few days, or is this just no more damage done?
I think an interesting question is what would have happened if this had been his performance at the first debate? And maybe that could have made a difference, because what we saw, especially on some of these down ballot races and the Senate races around the country, is that all of a sudden their numbers fell out of the bottom, and a lot of races like Alaska, Montana, Texas, races that had no business being competitive suddenly are. I think having it this late in the game, we've already had 50 million people vote, and it's it's compared to that first debate. So the first debate was so bad that this one being a little bit better, I think it might stem the bleeding, but I don't think it's going to turn around some of the worst outcomes that we saw of that first debate, moving some of those Senate races into the competitive field.
Angela, what did you think?
I thought last night's debate was rough. I still posted an Instagram selfie last night, was like, what was that? So I appreciate the low bar, but I also have to say that in a crisis like the one we're experiencing right now, which in some communities is threefold, it's not just COVID, it's economic injustice and racial injustice, there wasn't a lot said that meets the needs of communities that are desperate for real leadership and change. And so I think what we really have to be analyzing is how someone who has had such a disastrous response to COVID, with now the United States topping 1,100 deaths daily, someone who says that he's the least racist person in the room, not at all saying he's not racist, and someone who in the last debate told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. I know Joe Biden must have been hungry on the debate stage since he said po' boy. I wouldn't mind a fried shrimp po' boy myself right now. But I think the reality that we have, Sarah, I see you agreeing with that point. I think the reality that we have, right, is that there's a lot on the line. And I don't even think this election is about partisanship, right, Brianna? It's about human decency and morality. Whether you're a single issue voter on the economy or health recovery or COVID or disaster relief, since the Senate won't even pass the HEROES Act, there are a lot of single issues that you could vote on, and it could be a whole slate of things to vote Donald Trump out.
So you mentioned racism, you mentioned racial injustice. Let's talk about this. There was one moment from the debate last night where President Trump was attempting to reach out to black voters, or at least it seemed that way. Listen to what he said.
Nobody has done more for the black community than Donald Trump. And if you look, with the exception of Abraham Lincoln, possible exception, but the exception of Abraham Lincoln, nobody has done what I've done. I am the least racist person. I can't even see the audience because it's so dark, but I don't care who's in the audience. I'm the least racist person in this room.
Angela, what the?
Brianna. You can keep a straight face if you want to, but here's the reality. The reality is there's been a lot that's happened since the Emancipation was signed in 1863. And I think what that really tells us is the fact that Donald Trump comes from a party that doesn't appreciate the advancements of civil rights. Donald Trump comes from a party that really started undoing civil rights progress under Ronald Reagan and has not pivoted since then. Donald Trump comes from a party where in their budgets this year, they're zeroing blowing out offices of civil rights all throughout the federal government. He's not done more for Black people. He's actually caused more harm. And he wants Joe Biden to apologize for the crime bill, which I actually agree with, but he also should apologize for calling for the death penalty for 5 young men, of course, the Central Park 5, and all that he said he would do that hasn't really meant the rubber meeting the road in this administration. There's been 4 years, and he spent more time fighting a Black man who's no longer in office. That Black man is, of course, Barack Obama, who haunts him every day. He's busy undoing executive orders that actually would help the Black community and have helped the Black community. That's what he's been doing.
You know, Sarah, I wonder what you think. I've spoken to conservatives who feel like President Trump is doing a disservice to the party, right? That when it comes to how he speaks to Black voters, they cringe when they hear these kinds of things.
So 2 things that are interesting coming out of this. One, I think there's this assumption that when he's saying things like that, he's trying to speak to Black voters. I actually think there's a really decent chance that they're looking at their numbers among suburban white women that are just plummeting right now in double digits, a gender gap that may actually be larger than what we saw in 2016, and that what they're actually speaking to is trying to control those drops by making those white suburban women feel more comfortable voting for him, because those voters are giving feedback that they're not comfortable with his language around race. Second of all, speaking of gender, we've also seen something really interesting happening among communities of color, which is that the gender gap that Donald Trump has between men and women who, in general, is also reflected in communities of color, that he's actually winning a few more Black men than Black women, for instance, and quite a few more Latino men than Latino women. So, you know, to some extent, I think he was trying to talk to communities of color, but I think that actually some of that was aimed at these suburban white women that he has got to do better with if he has any chance of winning in states like Florida and Pennsylvania.
That's such a good point, Brianna.
Angela? Yeah.
Sorry, really quick. I was just going to say that's such a good point by Sarah. You know, I think that that is spot on, and I had not considered that at all, but it makes a ton of sense, because when you hear the rhetoric around I'm the least racist person instead of I'm not racist, or, you know, the people who are probably in all of our friend circles who say I have Black friends, those folks that speak in those defensive terms, that language resonates with them a whole lot more. What we really need to be talking about is why communities of color, particularly in this instance, Black voters, are used as a political football. Instead of trying to get points with whatever your language is, your policies at some point have to align with that language, so people feel comfortable not only saying they will vote for you when the posters come around, but actually going out to exercise their right to vote on your behalf and to your benefit.
Hey, thank you guys so much. I really enjoyed this conversation. Angela Rye, Sarah Isker, it's great to see you. I know I'll be seeing a lot more of you in the coming days.
Thank you.